carrying on from the last method, or my methods, I've started doing the herringbone stitch, and somebody asked about how I do that, so I'm going to show that to you now. But first I'm going to show you something else. Many of you will know this, but some of you haven't seen this before, where you get what's called a marl. The thread twists in a loop, and it's sort of a half knot, and if you pull it, it's just going to get tighter. If you pull it one way, it'll spill. If you pull it the other way, it won't, and it'll get tight, and you'll have to cut it off. So what I do is I put my needle through the loop, and I give it a test pull, because you give it a gentle pull, and if the loop doesn't shrink, stop and then pull it the other way. Generally, I believe it's the bitter end, not the standing end, that is the direction to pull from. So I'm at the end and I pull, and I can see that it's decreasing, and then I can just pull the knot out of the loop, give it a tug, and it's gone. So when I'm doing a herringbone, I'm just splicing in a new length of thread here. When I'm doing these ones, I often do it in a contrasting color for a couple of reasons, just because I can, and also because I want to see where my stitches are landing, and again, I want to make sure that they're not going to be visible. Here's the last pleat. I don't want them to occur over here, and with this I can tell at a glance if that's the case. So a herringbone stitch, as we can see here, so named because it looks like a fish skeleton, sort of. We do it from side to side. We don't do it up and down, because again, we want it to a little bit of stretch horizontally. We don't care if it stretches vertically. It doesn't need to, but we need a bit of give. So as you see, I'm just bringing it along. And again, one of the advantages of using that polystyrene sheet underneath is it has a very low friction coefficient. So the cloth will slide back and forth as I'm sewing it. So as you can see, I match the stitches. I make them neat as possible. I'm not sure how necessary it is that they actually be neat, but it just looks better. I'm going to finish that. I tie a knot, 1, 2, 3, and then I just put my needle through the knot so I can draw the knot down to the correct distance out, or at least what I consider to be. And then I do that. Now, since I've got you here, I'm going to show you how I do the lacing stitch between these two. And if you'll pardon me if you'll step back for a minute, I just decided to do this, so I had to get my cameraman to move. So I slip my thread in there. I'm just going to grab a contrasting color of thread. I'm going to use gray this time, just because otherwise I'd have to get up and walk away from the table while the camera is running. Will this be visible enough? Yes, it looks like it might be. Grab my beeswax, and again, I'm using a contrasting thread so that you can see what's going on, because if I was sewing with black thread here, it might as well be a podcast, because you wouldn't be able to see, or a radio show, if anybody can remember those. That would be just as fine if I could thread this needle. Okay, I'm just going to have to use the old man zoom. This isn't undignified at all. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so this, what I call a lacing stitch, it's rather like what we see here with these, where the canvas is overlapped. Its purpose, again, is to join the two pieces of canvas. So I'm going to have my hand underneath. I'm going to start the first one, because these two pieces of canvas, as you can see, they almost overlap there. So I am passing it through the cloth, and oh look, one of those loops has occurred again, so I'm spilling that knot again. Now trick is to pass it through the canvas without passing through the outer layer of cloth. If it doesn't quite catch the canvas, that's okay, because these pieces are sewn to the canvas with the herringbone stitch. So it's rather like a splice in woodworking, or a long splice in rope work. It works out to be pretty strong. So as you can see, I'm advancing a little bit, and then I'm doing an overcast, and then I advance, and I overcast, and I'm just going to carry this down to the chalk mark there. And one of the reasons why I've marked it so far away from the strap is I don't want this stitching, I don't want these stitches to be visible when we put the lining in, and there's the buttonhole turn back there. So, oh good, I've managed to unthread my needle again. Let's see if I can do this without taking my glasses off. There we go. So I do overcast a few times there, maybe do one with a half hitch where I pass it through the loop, and then I'm going to do some pad stitches. A pad stitch is as small as possible on the preferred side, in this case the inside, and you're advancing the stitch on the underside. Now I'm doing this, I'm also sort of going around this, the spot that will be visible later. But as you can see, it's a little bit visible. If I'd, you can see two very tiny ones there. They're going to be invisible. They're going to be covered by the lining anyway. But it is possible to do that so that the stitching is pretty much invisible. So, and I take it up again on the other side. Now this buttonhole will also be reinforced by two very heavy bar tacks. I'm going to have to take a look at my channel to see if I've talked about bar tacks before, and if not, well, I'll just have to do a video about them again. So I'm just going to carry this on. You don't have to see the whole thing in real time, but I'm just going to carry this on to the end and then sew it and tie it off. And that has produced a buttonhole, let's call it the buttonhole seam here, that's more strongly constructed than anybody else's in the trade. We've got the heavy piece of canvas on either side. They are securely attached with the herringbone stitch. They're more secured with this overcast, and then on top of that we're going to have the broad bar tacks. This is less, it's not as likely to blow out from people yanking on the strap. I mean, it's still possible, but here we have something that's more strongly constructed than anybody else in the trade. Thank you.